Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if kids are learning to read as well as they used to? This new study dives deep into how we can quickly and easily check on that. This research is all about a new way to test how well young kids in Italy can read individual words. Think of it like a quick checkup for their reading skills. Why is this important? Well, learning to read is super fundamental, and if kids struggle with it early on, it can really impact their whole school journey and even their happiness later in life. The scientists behind this study noticed that since the pandemic, there has been some concern about kids' learning taking a hit, especially in reading and writing. So, they wanted to create a really easy and free tool that anyone could use to screen kids' reading abilities on a large scale. Now, how did they do this? They created this online tool called iRoarWord. It's an automated screener, meaning a computer runs it, and it is open for anyone to use. They tested it on over 1,000 kids aged 6 to 11 in Italy. These kids also took some other standard reading tests, vocabulary tests, and intelligence tests. The main things, the iRoar word measures are how fast the kids respond and how accurate they are when they see a word. They even used a clever technique called item response theory to pick the best words and non-words to present to the kids. So what did they find? The big news is that their iRoarWord tool works really well. It's a good approximation of the more established standardized reading tests. They checked for something called concurrent validity, which basically means if their new test matches up with the old trusted tests. And it did. It agreed with the DD-2, which is a well-known Italian reading test. They also checked for theoretical consistency. This means they look to see if the iRoarWord showed the kinds of patterns that scientists already expect to see in reading. For example, they found that kids were generally faster and more accurate when they saw real words compared to made-up words, which is a known thing in reading research. They also found that how often a word is used in everyday language, its frequency, and how long a word is had an effect on how kids read them. This shows the tool is measuring something real about how we process words. And finally, they tested for construct validity. This is where they see if the tool can actually tell the difference between kids who are good readers and kids who might be struggling. They compared groups of children and found that the iRoarWord could indeed pick out the kids who were having more difficulty with reading, just like the standard tests could. This is super important because the whole point of a screener is to identify those who might need extra help. Looking at the data from the study, like in Table 1, you can see how the kids' scores on the different tests varied across different age groups. For instance, younger kids in grade 1 generally had slower response times and lower accuracy on the iRoarWord compared to older kids in grade 5, which makes sense as reading skills develop. They also show how the kids performed on the DD-2. The colored progressive matrices for nonverbal intelligence, and the Boston naming test for vocabulary. This table helps paint a picture of the diverse group of children they studied and how their reading-related skills varied. Let's quickly touch on how the iRoarWord actually works from the kid's perspective. Imagine a child looking at the tablet. They see a word flash up. Their job is to decide if it is a real Italian word or a made-up one. They do this by pressing a button. It is designed to be engaging for kids, with a bit of a story and fun characters, so it doesn't feel like a boring test. They record how fast the child presses the button and whether they got it right or wrong. This simple task, repeated many times, gives them a lot of information about the child's reading ability. In the results section, particularly looking at Figure 2's top panels, you see how the iRoarWord's accuracy and speed measures lined up really well with the scores from the DD-2 test. The numbers, like a correlation of 0.69 for accuracy and 0.68 for response time, are pretty strong, a p-value less than 0.001, which is called a flukometer, because it tells us how likely the result is just by random chance, means it is extremely unlikely these strong connections are just a fluke. This is great news, as it means their new quick online test is measuring pretty much the same thing as the established longer in-person tests. And as I mentioned before, when they looked at the results in section 3.2, they confirmed that the iRoarWord shows what they call a word superiority effect. This means kids are better and faster at recognizing real words than nonsense words. This effect was seen even after they accounted for other things that might influence performance, like a child's age or vocabulary. They also found that frequently used words were easier and faster to read than less common words, and shorter words tended to be read more accurately. These are all expected findings that make their tool seem very reliable and theoretically sound. Now, let's talk about the construct validity, which is where they really put the tool to the test with struggling readers. In section 3.3, they took kids who were identified as struggling with reading and compared them to two different groups of typical readers. One group was matched for age, and the other was matched for reading ability. This is a really smart way to isolate whether their tool is picking up on actual reading difficulties rather than just differences in age or general cognitive ability. The results here are fascinating. When they compared struggling readers to age-matched typical readers, both the standard DD-NEGIV-2 test and the iRoar Words accuracy score were able to tell the difference. Interestingly, the response time alone on the iRoar word didn't show a significant difference between these groups. However, when they combined the accuracy and response time into a single score they call LISAS, it also did a great job of identifying the struggling readers. This is a key takeaway. Sometimes just looking at one measure isn't enough, but combining different aspects like speed and accuracy can give a more complete picture. Figure 3 visually shows these differences across the groups. So, what does all this mean? In the discussion section, the authors really emphasize that the iRoar word is a highly reliable and valid tool for screening single-word reading in Italian primary school children. They highlight its high internal consistency, meaning the test items work well together. They also emphasize the strong correlation with the DD-2 test, confirming it measures what it is supposed to. What is really exciting is the scalability. Because it is online, automated, and free, it can reach a lot more kids than traditional tests. This is crucial for early identification of reading difficulties. In languages like Italian, which have a more transparent orthography, meaning the spelling-sound relationship is quite consistent. Accuracy scores can sometimes plateau quickly. This is why combining accuracy with response time, as their LISAS measure does, becomes even more valuable. Now, no study is perfect, and the authors are good to point out some limitations. One is that the kids were mostly from northern Italy. While they use standard Italian, there can be regional variations in how language is used. Another point is that this was a cross-sectional study, meaning they looked at kids at one point in time, to really understand how reliable the tool is over time. They need to do more longitudinal studies following the same kids over several years. They are already planning to do this, which is great. In conclusion, the iRoar word appears to be a fantastic new tool for Italian schools. It is fast, it is accessible, and importantly, it is validated to accurately screen single-word reading skills in young children. This can help catch reading problems early, which can make a huge difference in a child's educational journey and overall well-being. It is a great example of how technology can be used to make important assessments more available to everyone. And that is it for today's dive into some fascinating research. What do you think about this new reading screener? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video and want to keep learning about the amazing world of psychology, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss our next episode. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.